What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of On the Bluff. I'm your host, Christian Fowler. Joining me, as always, my co-host, Gabe Kuhn. Gabe, what's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing great, brother. The brand is thriving. That's all I can say.
Go.
I'm doing. I can't be doing any better. I feel great coming into this Monday recording, Tuesday show. Obviously, it'll be published, but I am doing fantastic because we got to hear this a lot on Saturday. My Sound of the South was pretty nice there in Doak, wasn't it?
Yeah, nice it absolutely was. It absolutely was. Anything for you this weekend other than watching football? Watching Memphis get a big win over Florida State?
Well, I watched my buddy Barry Odom, who was on G5 Classified a couple weeks ago. I watched him get a big dub on Friday. I had a birthday party that night. Played some charades. I haven't played charades in ages. I'm terrible at it. A little rusty. Then that was it, man. I kicked it. I didn't do much.
Yeah, mine was pretty nondescript. Had a birthday dinner for my aunt Friday night at Pete and Sam's. Past that,
all right. I know Pete and Sam's is just it's a Memphis institution. I get it.
I know. We've had this conversation. It's not your favorite.
There's so many better places to get a nice Italian meal for the same price.
It's good.
But you know what? I'm not going to trash Pete and Sam's. I like Pete and Sam's. I'm just saying.
Just saying. Yeah.
It's my take.
No, I don't disagree.
Anyone ask for it, but that's my take.
Yeah. No, I don't necessarily wholeheartedly disagree with that, but I am a big fan. I think it's more there about the vibes. I like the vibes there.
Well, yeah, and we've talked about it too. The corking fee for like whatever it is.
Yeah,
that's usually why you go. You get like a big group of friends and bring like 4 or 5 bottles of wine.
Yeah,
get them corked there. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, no problem at all. All right, so we have pretty nondescript weekends, but the University of Memphis football program did not. They went down to Tallahassee and were able to beat Florida State 20-12. They were, I think, closed as 7 or 7.5 point dogs in this game. They win by 8. I think we talked about this in pre-recording that some people are writing this off as, okay, Florida State's terrible. Memphis should have won this game. And you can have that opinion, but like I just mentioned, Memphis was not the favorite in this game. They were a touchdown underdog against Florida State, despite the way that the Seminoles started the season. Memphis was still able to go down there, get a win. Probably a lot of emotions in this game with Ryan Silvefield, who coached under Mike Norvell for 4 years, going against his old head coach. So there was a lot that went into this game. We talked about it ad nauseum last week. Our concerns were Florida State was 0-2. Backs were fully against the wall. They were coming off of a bye week. They had 2 weeks to prepare for Memphis. Memphis was still able to win. So I think this is a huge marquee win for Ryan Silverfield regardless. Yes, I know this is not the Florida State of last year. They're not as good as that team was, but there's still a lot of talent.
Right.
DJU is what holds them back and is what continued to hold them back in this game. He was pretty awful throughout the entire game. But I don't care. I don't care that Florida State is not the Florida State of old. I don't care that this isn't going to be their best year, that, who knows what's going to happen with them the rest of the season. But regardless, for Memphis to do what they did, to go on the road, hostile environment, where they've been known to struggle and start slow under Ryan Silvefield, and they come out with the win. Like this is a big win regardless. Don't care if it's not the top 10 team that we thought they were going to go play. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. They took care of business and walked out of Tallahassee with a big win and 3-0.
Well, what strikes me about this whole thing is just like the utter sort of domination physically that the Memphis team showed throughout 4 quarters. Like usually you see some like group of 5 teams against, that's a top 15 program in college football history, right? Like no one's going to argue really against that. Usually you see teams like Memphis fade. But I think it's a testament to the talent that's been brought in on the transfer portal, the talent that's been home growing for a while and baking in the oven, that they came out and they just were a better team. They won on the scoreboard. They won time of possession. They won first downs, third down efficiency, total yards, passing yards, rushing yards, red zone efficiency, goal to go efficiency. They had less turnovers. They had less penalties. Like everything about that game was Memphis. Memphis won every single category that wins you ball games. And what strikes me is you usually would talk about like a team getting a win like that on the road against Florida State, a Memphis team getting a win on the road against Florida State. You'd say, okay, there were some fluky things.
Yeah.
Like they had to get some lucky breaks because they're not as talented. I'd say all the flukes really were on Florida State's side.
Completely agree.
All to Malik Benson. You had that fluky interception. There was a fluky fourth down conversion that Anthony Landfear dropped. He doesn't drop many of those. Like, there was nothing fluky about what Memphis just did going down to Doak and winning that game. I thought it was impressive. You can sit there and say Florida State's not the same, and I get it, but it's still a preseason AP top 10 team. It's a game that you chalked up as a loss in the preseason when you were going by any metric going down the schedule. You're chalking that up as a loss, and they won by 8, and they won in relatively dominating fashion, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think another thing that was impressive is they were able to stay the course in this game because the offense was up and down. It wasn't a explosive performance from the offense, but the offense stayed the course. That last drive before they punted to Florida State, no, they didn't score. No, they didn't put points on the board in that situation, but they ran, I think it was like 6 minutes of clock.
Yep.
They were able to pick up a couple of first downs and pin Florida State deep. That's not one of those things that's ever going to show up on a box score, but when you're watching a game, that was extremely important to put all the pressure on Florida State to say you're down 8, you got 2 minutes left, you're backed up, you don't trust your quarterback. They did exactly what they needed to do. I think there were times, if you want to nitpick some things, there were times where I think they did get a little conservative throughout the game, and that's neither here nor there because they won. So ultimately, it worked out. But overall, they stayed the course. The defense dominated in this game, especially the defensive line. 4 sacks in this game. I think they had 12 tackles for loss. As a defense, forced 3 turnovers. It was a great showing for them. But overall, to me, that's what it is. They didn't waver from the beginning. They looked like they belonged from the first snap. And in that, that crunch time, the fourth quarter, when you said, "Oh, okay, are they gonna give it up? Are they gonna find a way to give this away? And is Florida State gonna find a way to win this game?" Memphis slammed the door shut on them. Like I said, they checked them clock, they pinned them deep, they played defense, and they stopped the game, and they never gave them a chance to even get close to scoring position. And in my opinion, that's all you can ask for in this game.
Offense, defense, special teams. It was complimentary football. That's the truth of it. Offense wasn't overly explosive, but they made the plays when they needed to. They converted when they needed to. By the way, Ryan is absolutely insane for going for it on 4th and 3, barely into Florida State's territory. The only special teams gaffe was the field goal miss, but is that really a gaffe? Like, I was fine with any decision he made there, whether he wanted to punt or go for it or kick the field goal, totally fine with me. Trust your defense regardless. And then, the special team play that we're not going to talk about that doesn't necessarily – it shows up on the box score, but I think people forget about it. I think it was Jamari Hawkins down there on the punt where Florida State had the muff punt. Colby Cox, the long snapper, falls on it. Jamari Hawkins made a hell of a play there. Like, people could look at that and be like, well, you got a muff punt. That was fluky. No, Jamari Hawkins has been taught if a Florida State blocker on the punt return team is too close to the punt returner, push him into him. And that's legal to do. You can do that. Pushes him directly into him. They muff the punt. Colby Cox falls on it. You steal a possession that way. Yeah. I just think they were all in tune with each other. And here's the truth of it. I think, like, going into conference play, you're going to get a lot worse defenses. So the offense will probably open it up, have more explosive plays naturally. But this team in the big games this year can win in different ways than they have in the past. You don't just have to score 55 points to go win a game. You can rely on your defense a little bit. You can trust them to get a turnover or two. You can, trust your special teams. You can be more aggressive that way. In certain situations where you're going to go for it because you wanted to keep your defense off the field, you can punt now. Yeah. I just think this team is a lot more well-balanced than any team we've seen since probably 2014, right? Where that defense run by Barry Odom with Tank Jakes and, Martin Affetti and Bobby McCain, all those guys, the Miami Beach Bowl year. This is the most balanced team since that season. But I think they have a lot more upward trajectory than we ever had. And obviously I played on that team.
Yeah, so let's talk about Jordan Hankins and this defense because they have been impressive this year. This was the biggest task so far. They've allowed 29 points through 3 games. They've, had countless tackles for loss, sacks, forced turnovers. They've done everything that you would want a defense to do under a defensive coordinator in Jordan Hankins, who just took over his first year at Memphis, and they just look like a competent unit. All three levels, the defensive line, the linebackers, the secondary, they look like a competent unit. And we were talking about this pre-show. To me, one of the defining factors of a good, well-coached defense is rallying to the ball. And it's something you hear from Pee Wee football all the way up until the NFL, like rallying to the ball, as many jerseys as we can have around it. We want at the ball. You never want people in isolation. See ball, get ball, basically. And that's what this defense does. Their pursuit is really, really phenomenal, whether it's the screens that we saw from Florida State, because we knew they're going to continue to prioritize the short passing game. They weren't able to get much off of it because you had everybody flowing to the football as soon as the ball was coming out of DJU's hand. So I think that is one of the defining factors for a competent defense, is just everybody flowing to the football, using the speed that they have, in the secondary and in the linebacking core. And honestly, having a centerpiece like Chandler Martin, who is just every week looks like he continues to get better, even though he was incredible coming into the season. He's what makes this defense go, and everybody kind of rallies behind him. So it's been fun to watch Jordan Hankins and what this defense have been able to do through the first 3 games.
12 TFLs against Florida State.
Yep.
4 sacks, brother. Like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
You couldn't imagine that going into that game. And I know, like, when we talked about keys to the game, I said, bring some 5-man, 6-man, 7-man pressures. I didn't think they'd do it like that, dog. Yeah. You got to that fourth quarter, and Jordan said, I have no respect for these guys.
Nope.
We're better than you.
And we're not scared.
He just brought 6-man pressure after 6-man pressure after 6-man pressure, then a 7-man pressure, then a simulated 8-man pressure. It's like this guy is a psychopath in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Because he understood what he had. He understood that Florida State had they couldn't buck up against them and run the ball. They had 24 carries for 37 yards against that Memphis front 7. They couldn't throw the ball because DJU can't do that. He made a couple of good throws. There's a couple of drops too that were kind of nasty. I thought Norvell schemed up a perfect screenplay that just got dropped by the running back on 1 third down. But man, Jordan Hankins, this guy made himself some money. I don't know if that'll be at Memphis and getting like a extension and more money, because it's harder to retain guys like that. But I hope he stays at Memphis. Sure, I want to see my alma mater thrive on the defensive side of the ball, and maybe he likes it here. But there's going to be some defensive coordinator openings in the offseason, and he made himself well available for those defensive coordinator openings at Power 4 schools and everything else. I know people don't like hearing that, but that's the truth. That's a good thing for Memphis this season, though. He is aggressive when he needs to be aggressive. He's got a very, very well-coached front 7 that can always stop the run. One of my concerns, too, was this defensive line, right? Yeah. They're not that big, a little, in the way of like sort of being unproven. They don't have a lot of guys who have a bunch of starts under their belt. And those guys just ate Florida State's offensive line's lunch.
Yeah.
Like they were in the backfield every play.
From the rip, too.
It was crazy. I'm just not used. The reason it's so exciting, and you could just hear the excitement in my voice, I'm just not used to this.
Yeah.
I was not prepared for the ass whooping that the Memphis defense would put on a team in Florida State. I was not ready for that.
Yeah, no, definitely not, but it was great to see. So transitioning from one coach and the defensive coordinator, Jordan Hankins, to the head coach in Ryan Silverfield. Ryan's had a bit of a rocky ride at Memphis, just to call it for what it is. When you're coming off the heels of the greatest success that this program's seen with Mike Norvell at the helm, and you have some ups and you have some downs. We've seen a lot of this fan base against him at times. Just like I said, call it what it is. We've seen it. We've seen people calling for him. There was a time where it felt like it was going to happen just because his supporters were very few and far between. But now we have really seen that shift with the 10-win season last year, with the big bowl win that they had against Iowa State. And now with the 3-0 start to the season, another win over a Power 4 program in Florida State, and going and, beating the coach that he coached under at Memphis. what have you seen, just from social media, from interactions, from all that kind of stuff, as far as the outlook on Silverfield and how it's changed drastically over the last year plus?
I mean, there's been that like lukewarm feeling, even after the
Mhm.
10-3 season. Like
Yeah,
everybody was kind of lukewarm on it, and they have high hopes going into the season, but they're still being, cautiously optimistic.
right.
After that win, feels like no one's being cautiously optimistic. They're being as loudly optimistic and as excited as they possibly could be, and
Yeah,
for good reason. I think Ryan has turned the corner as a head coach, and one thing that I think at the beginning of his tenure we neglected to just sort of bring up or talk about enough. He was a first-time head coach. COVID, NIL, transfer portal all hit. It's hard to be a first-time head coach, much less having to deal with all those changes that quickly. I
right.
think you saw a turning point at the beginning of 2023. He knew what he had to bring in the transfer portal. He knew he had to recruit the players on his own team. And what you've seen is some of the best continuity in college football right now, and some of the best ability to just plug holes that he needs to plug, and doing it in a way where you're not spending a hell of a lot of NIL money. You're sort of finding some diamonds in the rough that have
Right.
been able to come through for you. Um, I also think he has gotten better at selling his program and
Yeah.
talking to the fans. I think that's been a switch. The confidence has definitely changed with him. And, another thing I think he prioritized in 2023, sort of looking at the rest of the NIL world, seeing what SMU was doing and seeing what UTSA had done with Frank Harris. I think he prioritized, hey, we got to find a way to raise
Yeah.
some money in the NIL world. And I know we can give a lot of credit to Laird Veach, a lot of credit to, a bunch of people behind the scenes, FedEx for sure. But that doesn't happen unless there is a belief behind the scenes in Ryan Silverfield. And I think
Absolutely.
he brought the right people along at the right time. And I truly believe like this is a different, like if you're still holding on to the 2 6 and 6 years, I think you're still being a little short-sighted. I think this is a different Ryan Silverfield and a
Yeah.
different program altogether than what we saw 2 and 3 years ago.
Yeah, he just looks so much more comfortable on the sidelines, which just natural. That's going to come with time, but not only a visual thing, but just when the flow of the game, as far as his comfortability with situational football, situational awareness, when to call timeouts, when not, just those different things that you can only get from reps from doing
Yeah.
it. And clearly he's
Still aggressive as shit, though. My
Yes,
God.
no, he is super aggressive, but that's just
Right.
his style. That's different from, doing one thing or doing the other and kind of going back and forth and not having an identity. I think that's kind of overall what I'm trying to say. We see an identity with Ryan Silverfield now. And of course, once again, I'm not trying to say anything about him early in his career as a head coach. It just takes time to find that. That's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in your first season. And it just feels like now he knows his identity. He knows who he is as a head coach. He's comfortable with it. He's comfortable with game flow and game management. And then obviously all the stuff I'm talking about on the field right now, but all the stuff
Right.
that you mentioned as far as behind the scenes and what he's been able to do, that's huge. But if you don't
Yeah.
capitalize on the field, if you don't go win ball games, then it doesn't really matter. And I
No one
think
gives a shit about your GPA if you're going 4-8 every year, right?
no, and nobody cares how high of transfer ratings you
Right.
have or
Correct.
what recruits that you're getting if you're not having success on the field. And I think we're kind of seeing a culmination of everything come together: the recruiting, the coaching staff, the comfortability with just having an identity, and on the field game management, and the roster catching up from the talent that they lost at the time that he was taking over, and the guys that they brought in and kind of cultivated this roster with. So it just feels like a full culmination right now. And obviously we're only 3 weeks in. It's a long season
Sure.
ahead, and not to look too far ahead, but when you just look at the schedule and what's coming up
Right.
with 9 more games left, there will more than likely be only one game that Memphis is not favored in, and that's the last game of the season against Tulane. Other than that, at least right now, according to ESPN's Football Power Index, they are favored in every single game, not against Tulane.
Offensively, are you a little concerned about the lack of run game again? But Florida State's still got a decent front line. They have a good front seven. It's hard to judge it fully.
There are a couple things I'm concerned about offensively. Number one, they have struggled at times to get their playmakers going. Rock Taylor's only been over 70 yards, I think, in one game so far this season. Demir, hasn't had his big plays that we've come used to seeing from him last year. He was really their field stretcher last year. Mario Anderson had the good game against Troy, so I'm not overly concerned about that. I think with such they'll eventually figure out that run game. So for me, number one, getting Demir and Rock going.
Yes.
Because it just 100%. Hasn't happened yet. We haven't been able to see that yet. And number two, at least in this game, if we're just putting this game in a vacuum, Memphis's tackles did not look great in this game.
I expected that, though.
Yeah, I did too, especially with having to go against Patrick Payton because really Kedrell Lewis struggled heavily for the majority of the game.
He's a slower-footed right tackle. It's like,
exactly. And when you have smaller edge rushers like Patrick Payton, who is the best player overall on this team, will be probably the highest drafted guy on this team, it's understandable. But those are just things that have to be cleaned up. And Chris Adams, we've seen a lot of good from him this year. So I'm not trying to take
I think he pass protected pretty well this weekend.
I think he did as well.
It's just the run blocking because I think he's a little light.
Yeah, especially against a team like Florida State that has good size. But for me, like Kedrell Lewis looked beatable in that game. He looked a little bit concerning in that game, and maybe like you said, it's just a product of playing against a player like Patrick Payton, being he's a mammoth of a man and a little bit slower footed. And so speed rushers against Memphis's right side of their offense is going to concern me for the rest of the season. But as long as they can get their playmakers going, they've got to get the down the field passing game going because it hasn't happened yet. And I think in games where they're able to get more into the script and they're able to run the ball a little bit better, which they will be from here on out, I would imagine. I think, like you said at the top of the show, it's going to pick up. These defenses are going to get weaker.
Like you get Navy and Middle Tennessee and Rice and all these teams. Like I just feel like in 3 or 4 weeks, we're just going to we're not going to be having this conversation.
I agree. My concern level is
when you play better teams. Yes, we can have this conversation.
But
I just feel like based on what's on their schedule coming up, I think they can really open up the playbook and probably have those 400-yard games, 400-plus yard games that we've become used to. And, they may score a whole lot more points. But I do get it. Like there is some concern about the offensive side of the ball and how they're pacing. I will give the all offensive line credit in that Florida State game, though. Started really rough.
It did.
As the game went along, they got better.
They did.
They started breaking a few runs. They looked more comfortable. They kept Seth upright consistently. It looked like Kedrell, even though he was going against Patrick Payton, he got beat a couple times in the second half. But he made some adjustments.
Yep.
So that's all you can really ask for in those situations. When you're playing some really talented guys on the other side, you're gonna get beat sometimes. You just have to keep your wits about you, move on to the next play. And I think what's nice about this offensive line, before the season, 99 starts combined, they have a lot of guys that can sort of compartmentalize, put some bad plays in the rear view.
Adjust on the fly.
Forward. Yeah, and keep moving forward. So we'll see how that all plays out. Now, I will say, can I say this?
Yeah.
Kind of worried about this Saturday, brother. Kind of worried. Like just at least like a tad bit. This is the perfect letdown spot.
Yeah.
Navy coming off a bye week in gray, gnarly Annapolis, middle of the day, after you just had the high of your season, beating Florida State. And Navy has a different wrinkle this year. They still do the triple option, but they do some of that spread triple option where they'll put their quarterback into shotgun. Like there's just a few things that like add up for me to be like, hey, should we look at this a little harder than we're looking at it right now?
I don't think that's entirely unfair because when you're coming off it's this way with Navy every year. Pretty much every year we're talking about Navy as could this be the letdown? Could this be the trap game? When you're coming off the high emotion of what they went through this past week, going to Tallahassee, beating Florida State, getting that validity, and then you're coming in against a completely different offense.
Triple option.
And
want a
we
week
know
rest.
we know this is something they start preparing for in the spring. That's no secret.
True.
They're preparing for Navy in the spring, getting ready because that's the only time they'll see it, and they don't want to be caught with their pants down. But still, it is completely different from what you've played against. And I think you made a great point. Navy has incorporated a little bit more passing than we're used to seeing this year, and there's at least more of a threat of that. But I think what diminishes my concerns a little bit and why I think my concern level is low on this is because if that defensive line plays anything like they did against Florida State on Saturday, then Memphis will be fine. And also with this linebacking core, with Chandler Martin, with Matt Hudson, with some of the guys that they have.
And Elijah's still hurt. We're still waiting on an update about Elijah.
Yeah, if he'll be out there or not. And if he is, you feel even better about it.
Well, Bryce Edmondson played good ball.
Bryce did play good. I was impressed by Bryce and the way that he played because he's just seen limited action throughout his career. But if the front seven plays the way that they did against Florida State, I don't really have that many concerns. Because if Navy pops off one big pass play, that's not the end of the world. That's probably going to happen. It just is the nature of the beast when you're playing Navy. Everybody's selling out to the run. Boom, you get beat over the top. It's probably going to happen. But if they can keep the run game at bay and not let them get into 3rd and 1 every time, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, it's just and what does give me hope is I think through 2 coordinators in a row with Mike McIntyre – or D coordinators in a row. Mike McIntyre, Matt Barnes, they had the book out on Navy for the most part. And I think you have a more competent coordinator right now in Jordan Hankins. I think he'll cross his T's and dot his I's, and I think they'll be all right. But still, like if you just like did the math for a formula for a letdown, this is exactly what it looks like. 100% what it looks like. But I'd imagine like every coach on that staff is saying the exact same thing.
Exactly.
So I would imagine, Monday meeting, you talk for a little bit, or Sunday meeting, hell, after doing your corrections, I'm sure that was the first thing said. Like, guys, know you're happy. Let it the hell go. Who gives? We have Navy coming up, and we know that that's a trip up spot. So get ready.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We're going to transition, talk just a little bit of Memphis basketball before we get to the Hot 3. And I'm going to flip it to Gabe for good reasoning that you'll learn in a second if you haven't already seen via social media. But I'm going to flip basketball over to you, Gabe, and let you open us up on this conversation.
So we had it announced on Friday. The Hoops for St. Jude Tip-Off Classic is going to be coming to Memphis October 15th. 6:30 will be the start of it, and that's going to be the men's game. Then 8 o'clock is going to be, or 8:30, well, as soon as the men's game gets done at FedEx Forum, you'll have the women's game. North Carolina versus the men, South Carolina versus the women.
Big.
South Carolina, that's going to be a tough one. But either way, it's an exhibition classic put on by St. Jude. It'll be on ESPNU and ESPN Plus, and all the proceeds for ticket sales into FedEx Forum, all that they raise on the telecast is going to go straight to St. Jude. This is beautiful in a litany of ways. First of all, to be able to partner with St. Jude and all that they do to defeat childhood cancer, like that is just as phenomenal a cause as you possibly could imagine. The second thing that really sort of comes to my mind is the rallying behind all the Memphis Athletic Department has to offer. The entities in this city in the past 2 years have stepped up to try to do everything they can to raise the viability nationally for Memphis football and basketball. FedEx with the NIL money, St. Jude here with the Tip-Off Classic, and we'll talk about in a second. They want to grow it into something way bigger. And then the third thing I think for this program, it's getting North Carolina and Alabama in the preseason. Yeah, they ought to be battle ready by the time they get to game 1 against Missouri. So it's really cool. And this is what I'm going to say, and I'm going to plug it because we're right here. We have right now. I did it last Friday. Chris Boyson, who's the senior vice president at AllSac, talked to him about the whole thing. He let us in on a lot of their plans. And then it came out. It'll come out. We're recording on a Monday. It'll come out at 10 a.m. on Tuesday. So you can go check it out right this second. I had to sit down with Penny Hardaway and with the CEO of AllSac, Rick Shadiak. And it was very enlightening just to hear, Rick talk about their why why they do things like this, how much is for the kids, seeing the plans around the game with South Carolina and Dawn Staley visiting St. Jude and Hubert Davis in North Carolina visiting St. Jude. And then also, I think the biggest thing here is just like to see what they want to grow this into. They don't want to stop at an exhibition. They want to make this an in-season tournament.
Yep.
And they want to make it every year Memphis as a host team. And that to me is awesome proposition and great for this program, great for this city, for a potential revenue generating deal downtown. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in lockstep with you. Totally agree. I'm excited to see the interviews, like you said, with Chris Boyson, Rick Shadiak, Penny Hardaway. I'm sure it's gonna be great. I'm sure you and Kenny did a wonderful job today, so I'm excited to see it when it drops.
We got Nola. Nola walked.
Yeah, I do. I see a nose.
Nola heard me start talking about it, and she had to
get in there too.
Yeah.
But honestly, thoughts for the exhibition is basically copy and paste from what we said against Alabama. Yes, it is. It's great. It's great for them. The Christian brothers, it's cool to be able to do that, to play a local team, but it's not the preparation that you need, especially when you're scheduling non-conference the way that Penny Hardaway wants to schedule non-conference. This gets you ready. This gets you battle tested, like you said. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what Penny had to say to me is he's like, Larry, talking about Larry Finch, like taught him, play Lemoyne Owen, play Christian Brothers, like help give the in-town schools some looks.
Right.
But at the same time, he talked about it being a different age and a different time. And to be able to have those looks early are the most valuable possible thing in this day and age of college basketball. And I agree with it. I'm in lockstep with him.
Yeah.
100% agree.
100%. And then as far as just St. Jude being involved, like you said, is there a better cause? Is there something better for that? It's hard. It's hard to beat. It is an incredible organization. And so to be able to have an event that supports that and everything goes towards it. And then for the long-term goal, as you mentioned, of wanting it to be an in-season tournament, wanting it to be a yearly thing, I think that's incredible. And I hope that gets done sooner rather than later, because it's hard to beat that cause. And we see so many in-season tournaments that don't have anything behind them like this.
Right. It's such a good cause and such a good idea. And like, I would bet on it working. Like, I think it will become what they want. Because here's the thing, St. Jude, they don't usually fail plans. You know what I mean? They hatch something, they have an idea, it usually comes to life. And so I love what they're doing over there. And Rick Shadiak, I hope I can bring this on air. He basically was talking about ticket sales for the exhibition, because they need good ticket sales to prove that, hey, this can be an in-season tournament. We have the hometown contingent. They're going to love it. They're going to come out. They're going to support. He said he'd love 10,000. And I go, that seems overly doable. I think that can 100% happen. I personally think, and I know maybe I'm on the positive side of things, I think we could aim for 13 to 15 in there at the least.
I wouldn't surprise me.
Because one thing, no matter what you feel about Penny in this basketball program, you still want to watch.
Yeah.
And also, on top of that, if you know that your ticket's going to go to St. Jude, like, I mean, come on. It's just, it seems like an unbeatable, trip to FedEx Forum. That's just my opinion on the thing. I think you can aim higher than 10,000, though. I think you can get higher than that.
Yeah. Yep. I totally agree. Okay. Well, we're going to take a quick break. You and Kenny, as I mentioned a second ago, killed it earlier today with the interview, and we get to welcome Kenny in and get him on. He's been behind the camera all day, so it's time for him to show his face. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back on the other side with Kenny Stubblefield and the Hot Three.
Ja Morant and Zach Edey were videoed in the lab working on pick and rolls, and it got everybody hot and bothered.
Oh man, working on pick and rolls, post entry pass, lobs, like follows where Ja was crashing, Edey was coming in behind him, cleaning up. Like it made me fired up. He just looks so fluid and so smooth next to Ja that they look like a match made in heaven for their skill sets.
It's just nice to see it, because it's all theoretical. You know, everybody's got a hot take when the Grizzlies used the number 9 pick to draft Zach Edey, a 7'5" big man out of Purdue. This should work. This may do this. This may do that. We've just talked ourselves to death about Zach Edey and John Morant. So it was nice, even for a 30-second clip, just to see that they were actually working on it.
Tune in to the 2 Buck Sports Show with Rusty Witten and Drew Gann every Friday at 3 p.m. only on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
I think Jabari Smith Jr. and I don't want this to be true, but I almost feel maybe Tobias Harris, yo.
What's wrong with Tobias Harris? We've had this discussion. All the guy does is give you a double-double, 20 and 10.
Bro.
That's it. That's it. Every night.
Who?
Tobias Harris.
Stop that. Tobias Harris gives you a double-double 8 times a year. Stop that.
What?
He gives you
this times a year.
Look, I'm a fan. And this is what I'm saying because I continue to be like, he's a dude he's a tease. It's a tease. It's like, God, dog, he's sexy. But it just won't work. Like he should be, but it's there, but it's just when the games, it's just consistently. I don't know if it's you need more people to believe in it, something, but I don't want, and also just to get lost in the rest in that Houston team.
Tune in to the Night Court Podcast with your hosts, Rob Fisher and Brevin Knight, on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
You're muted. You're muted.
I knew I was going to mess something up.
Dude, I gave you like the most beautiful professional intro.
Hey, brother, he's had a long day, man. He's
Yes.
been putting up his gear, taking down his gear, walking in the rain to put away the gear, taking the gear out.
He's been getting dubs all day, so we can afford an L from Kenny.
Yeah, just one L works. It's fine.
Yeah.
Kenny.
Listen,
You're excused, brother.
I know that the interview is out now, so people can go watch Gabe totally have an awesome sit-down conversation with Penny Hardaway and Rick Shadiak.
See, this is we're
The L's are piling up now, Kenny.
There we go, Kenny. We got your back. We got you. We see you. Man.
My computer just died. Hold on. What the heck is going on?
They're stacking up quick.
That's
Wow.
it. That's all. That's the last one. Guarantee it.
We're gonna start this over again.
No. Ride with it. Ride with it, Kenny. Come on.
But
Ups and downs.
Why is the music not playing?
There it is.
It was playing.
It's playing. It was just really loud.
It's playing.
I can't hear anything.
Now it's not playing.
It's not now. It's good. That's
fine. Let's ride. Let's ride. What you
All
got?
right, here
Kenny?
we go. Hey, welcome back.
He's gonna cut that in post.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna cut. Hey, by the way,
clips.
just behind the fourth wall, we just had a whole clusterfuck of a situation with
Why did we get roped?
I don't know
sorry.
if we. I don't know.
I did. But listen, man, I know. So the interview is out now with Gabe and Christian. It's Gabe and Rick and Penny. Gabe, tell me, like, it was really cool sitting down with Penny and getting to kind of experience that with him. But how awesome is Rick Shadiak?
Rick is a A1 100 of 100 human being. I mean, he's unbelievable.
I told him
100 of 100. I meant 100% of 100. He's one of one human being. He's everything that you'd imagine as far as being, that involved in raising money for such a great cause at St. Jude. Like he's exactly who you want heading up Alsac, and he's a treasure. He's a damn Memphis treasure. There's no doubt.
I told him after, I was like, man, I kind of want to run through a brick wall right now. Like, that's how I feel after hearing you talk. And I was talking to somebody else afterwards about it. They were kind of debriefing the whole thing, and the guy goes, he raises $2.7 billion a year for Alsac. You better believe he's a motivational person. I'm like, that makes total sense.
100%.
All right,
100%.
let's get to the hot three. Hey, by the way,
and also here's the most important thing. This is how good of a human being he is. He put up with my ass for a whole 20 minutes. That's the most important thing.
It was rough. It was rough. I'll have to tell you some jokes I made to Rick once we get off air.
Great.
Relatively inappropriate to a CEO of Alsac, but whatever. I might have embarrassed myself. All right, here we go. Topic number 1. I don't hear any music in my ears, and so this is really throwing me
It's
off.
fine. It's fine. It's totally fine. Yeah. No. We can't hear it anymore. It's
okay.
cool.
Okay,
we don't need it.
We don't need it. Here we go. All right, let's go. NFL Week 2 recap, boys. Let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys. Oh wait, no.
Oh no.
I mean, we can. This is this is why last week when it was at the top of the mountain, I tempered expectations. I didn't get on my high horse because I know this team like the back of my hand. They do something really good and then they do something really bad, and that's how it works. And I had flushed it before halftime, and I was fine with it.
The damn Saints, though, putting the ass whooping like that on you. Good Lord! I mean,
what it is. That Shanahan tree runs deep, man. If there's anybody that's ever on Shanahan's staff, take them as an offensive coordinator. Do it.
Derek Carr's turning back the clock a little bit.
Yeah.
5 touchdowns and 1 interception, 443 yards through 2 games. Also, Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
It's been a rough couple of years, but it looks like he's back, man. 20 carries, 115 yards.
Like I said,
4 touchdowns. Did he account for 4 touchdowns? I think.
4.
Yeah.
4 touchdowns.
4.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a fantasy. That's a fantasy owner's freaking dream.
Yeah, that was Shanahan's good, and anybody that comes from him is good. And Clint Kubiak called a great game. But week two was really kind of the week of the upset. I think 3 of the biggest 4 favorites were upset this week, and that's not including the Cowboys in that, because I think they were up there as well. But the Vikings beat the 49ers with Sam Darnold at quarterback and Justin Jefferson for like 60% of the game. The Raiders, who were the biggest underdogs of the week, beat Baltimore, and Baltimore continues to just look incompetent offensively. I don't care what anybody says about 2-time MVP Lamar Jackson. He has looked horrible to start the season. I'll give the man his flowers when he deserves them, but I'm also going to be critical when he deserves to be critical. And
he's lost a lot of weight, man. That's why.
He can still run the ball, but he's got the happy feet in the pocket. And then once again, I don't know why we continue to be surprised by this, but the Buccaneers, are 7.5-point underdogs, go into Detroit and beat the Lions. So it was really that was really the story of the week.
Yep,
was the upsets, and there were some good games.
The Vikings over the San Francisco 49ers was the most surprising to me, though. The Ravens looked so out of sorts offensively in week 1 that I thought that, like, okay, maybe there's this outside chance that they sort of screw around with the Raiders. And every time you get like an 8.5-point favorite, like that big of a favorite in the NFL, you start thinking to the other side. You're like, are the Raiders going to stick in this thing? Because it feels like they're begging me to take the Ravens when you have that big of a line. But I do want to warn people. My thoughts about Sam Darnold are going to be way more tempered than a lot of people.
They have to be.
For people praising the shit out of him, man. And he's been good. Don't get it twisted. He is taking an offense that lost Kirk Cousins, stepping in, doing great work through 2 weeks. But everyone seems to have a short memory, because I don't know if you remember this, Christian, but 2021, when Matt Rule brought in Sam Darnold to quarterback the Panthers, they started 3-0, and he started with a 6 TD to 1 interception TD to INT ratio. So I just want this thing to age a little bit farther before we start crowning Sam Darnold as the next Baker Mayfield that has been resident. You know what I mean? Let's take a little bit of time with this thing.
Yeah. I don't fully disagree with that, because it was the same it was the same thing with Geno Smith. Like, it took so long for a lot of people to be like, okay, he's actually playing very well this year. Yeah. And so 2 games is just not a big enough sample size. But at the same time, you can only go off of what you see right now.
He's doing replicable things. I can give him that.
Yeah, and here was the biggest thing with Carolina. What did he have that no one else had? Christian McCaffrey. How much easier does that make it? Does that make it to be a quarterback in the NFL? Much, much easier. Not only when you have a guy that you can turn around and hand the ball off to 20 times a game and he can single-handedly carry a team, but when you can when you can have a check down go for 10 to 15 yards on pretty much any time you want to, it helps out a lot. And a lot of what he did in Carolina was within that 6 to 7 yard per attempt. He was a lot of lot of short throws. His down the field passing has looked good, and I think that's what I've been most impressed with. And the 97-yard touchdown to Justin Jefferson is automatically where you go.
Yep.
But even outside of that, he's made a lot of these deep to the sideline, corner, and deep out route throws that are considered the harder throws for an NFL quarterback. And he's just looked really good. And at the same time, on top of that, talent's never really been a question.
It's never been a question, ever.
He was highly recruited coming out of high school. He went to USC. He was a top 5 draft pick. The pedigree and the talent were there. It was always the confidence, because when you start with the Jets, with who the Jets were at that time, it's tough. And then scheme. And right now, it makes sense that he would have more confidence. He just sat behind Brock Purdy for a year in San Francisco and learned from Kyle Shanahan, who is one of the greatest offensive minds that's ever come through the NFL. And now he's behind, playing under Kevin O'Connell, who Kevin O'Connell is, I think finally this year, if the Vikings continue to play like this, he is going to get the respect and recognition that he deserves, because he is an incredible offensive mind. I mean, you think what the Vikings were able to do last year with Joshua Dobbs and with Nick Mullins, and that's not because of Joshua Dobbs and Nick Mullins are really good NFL quarterbacks. It's because Kevin O'Connell knows what he's doing and plays to the strengths of the guys that he has. And he's doing that with Sam Darnold right now. So it's been really impressive. Could it blow up? Yes, it could. Sure. But what he has shown so far looks sustainable.
Yeah, and then there's another guy that I think is deserving of flowers that I thought was kind of a fraud at first, because he came over from the Titans, and I was like, the Titans, I could have run that damn offense with Derrick Henry, getting the ball 400 times a game, running for 2,000 yards a year. But Matt LaFleur, he did that this week, winning a ball game with Malik Willis, a quarterback who's been there for 4 weeks?
Yeah.
Damn impressive. And he didn't turn the ball, didn't throw a pig. I'm like,
hey,
brother, you get your flowers for that. That's impressive as hell.
Guess what tree LaFleur came from?
Exactly, the Shanahan tree. We get it. It's the same idea. Now this week is the week of injuries, brother.
It really was.
The Rams are cooked. Kupp and Puka Nacua.
Yep.
Both going on the IR. The 49ers, after losing to the Vikings, it is like scary hours for them. It's terrifying. Debo, Kittle, and CMC and Christian McCaffrey, like they said that what did you tell me before the show? Saturday was the day he hurt the worst.
Yeah, and
his Achilles, and they're terrified if he even hits the field this year, he's going to blow that thing out.
Yeah,
they're going to be down a majority of their offense for a majority of the year.
Yeah, and it all started on Thursday night with Tua, which I think we'll discuss a little bit more here in a minute, but I mean that's always tough to see. He's so easy to root for too. Like I know he gets a lot of hate because he's a system quarterback, quote unquote, whatever. I'm not going to get into that discussion, but really, like he's just always been one of those guys, for me at least, that's very easy to root for. And to see that happen again is horrible. You mentioned some guys that were injured. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua was last week. The 49ers injuries. Isaiah Pacheco broke his, I believe it was his
fibula.
8 weeks. Yeah, 6 to 8 weeks that he'll be out.
Jermaine Johnson from the Jets.
Yeah,
they are thin at the edge positions, bro.
Yes,
because Hassan Reddick's still holding out.
Yeah.
And now Jermaine Johnson's out for the year.
Yeah.
And they got ran over by the 49ers. They need as much help on that D-line as possible.
Yeah, they definitely do.
They're down to Michael Clemens as a starter right now. Like, good God, dude. It's nasty.
But yeah, there's a lot of big time players getting injured this weekend, and I think it's a conversation that really has started over the last couple of years, and continues to just be very, very on the front page and apparent. And it goes back to a conversation that we've had in depth multiple times of just the lack of time they have to prepare, with less practices, with less training camp practices, with less live reps, with less tackling and hitting. And it just, your body is, this is my opinion. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. I don't know any of this stuff. And I'm not on the side of any kind of more head injuries. And I'm glad that, that's a relevant
We're trying to
topic.
limit them. Yeah.
Correct. But if you're not getting hit and you're not hitting people, then it just logically says to me, your body cannot be conditioned to take that for 60 minutes every week in a game, 17 plus times per year. and we're seeing the effects early in the season because that's just when people aren't prepared, and it's not only soft tissue stuff which is become more prevalent, but it's just injuries as a whole are up because people are not ready for it.
And I think also the turf, I think everybody should be playing on grass. That's always been my opinion. Like I can tell you from being an offensive lineman, stomping around on turf as opposed to grass, you just consistently feel better. But I think just turf plays into it as well. You just see a lot more guys have, those non-contact injuries when you're playing on a hard surface like that.
Yeah.
So, I think there's a lot of things that go into it. Now, with Tua, I mean, the latest report on Tua, obviously he's got a concussion. We know that much. And, of course, it had to be DeMar Hamlin, by the way, that delivered the hit. But it sounds like he's not giving thought to retiring. But that's the big conversation at this point. You know what I mean? And I think we're now, as opposed to where we've been in the past, where Andrew Luck retired and we shamed him, and Calvin Johnson retired and we shamed him, and Patrick Willis retired and we shamed him. It's like you're going out at the peak of your powers and you're leaving behind a franchise and teammates that need you. They've been shamed like that in the past. I think we're now at a time in society, especially with Tua, where most people would just sort of pat him on the back and say, you made the decision for your family and your future. And no one would lose their mind. Maybe a couple of Dolphins fans, but who cares? I think most of the football watching society that takes in the National Football League would respect his decision. And it hasn't always been that way in the past.
Yeah, 100%. And that's one of those things where it's like I've seen that be a very hot button topic since Thursday. Is should he retire or should he not retire? And there's been so many people with opinions on it. But at the end of the day, like it's not up to us, and two, we don't know what neurologists and people that he's hearing from are saying behind the scenes. So there's no way that we can give an informed opinion on should he retire, should he not retire. Totally up to him. And even if there was more risk involved, that's his decision and he can make that. And I don't think he can be blamed regardless of what decision he makes. But the one thing that I will say that concerned me about it is it didn't look brutal. He's just one that cannot take a blow to the head.
Yes,
exactly. And that's what was kind of different about this one is it wasn't a big shot. The hit by DeMar wasn't big. I think it looked to be when his helmet hit the turf. That's kind of what caused it. But that happened. That happens every week. Just a hit. Your helmet hitting the turf. That just happens when you get hit. It didn't look like a hit that would cause a concussion. And for me, that is the only thing. Me and my friends were watching, and that's what we were saying during it. It was like that does not look like a hit that causes the fencing. The locking up, which is typically like big explosive hits, and you're like, oh my gosh, that was terrible.
But like the one where he sort of curled up a couple of years ago, where he got slammed on his head, like that looked brutal. Right. This one was just
pretty standard.
Diving.
We love UFC on the Bluff, right? Like, and we watch some of the, we've been watching it so long. We've seen some of these athletes that have been able to take punches at a obscene level during their prime, like Chuck Liddell being a main example of it, right? Like this guy he could get hit in the head with a baseball bat and would be fine. By the end of his career, by the time he had accumulated so many shots, he got knocked out by Rich Frankfurt with a
look at him right now. I mean, like if you do some of those guys pre-fighting and then post-fighting, like they're slurring their speech and they can't talk the same. They pause a lot. They don't say the right words when they don't have it.
And that's what concerns me about this Tua situation is y'all are right. It didn't seem like it was a hit that should have created that much of an impact. But maybe it's an accumulation of.
It's easier to get another concussion once you get one.
Once you get one, it's easier to get. Your brain doesn't completely heal. Like you hear guys talk about, man, you get knocked out. Like Justin Gaethje got knocked out by Max Holloway. He hasn't fought in months because he said he hadn't even sparred in months.
And like the problem is, like every time Tua goes down, it's severe. It's not like, oh, Bell's wrong. He was stumbling.
It's visible.
Bell's wrong. He is unconscious. And his fingers and his arms are curling up. Like that's a severe traumatic brain injury.
Right.
Scary,
and I think Nick Saban said it right though. Ultimately, Nick Saban said, listen to your medical professionals, talk to your family, weigh your options, and make your decision. It's your decision to make.
100%.
Don't let anybody else sway it. It should be the
Yeah.
doctors and your family helping you make the decision. That's the truth of it. I've seen a lot of people give him advice. I even think Antonio Pierce, the Raiders head coach, went as far to say is he should retire at his presser. And he's a former football player, so he understands and I take his word at its value. I truly believe he means that, and he means well by saying that.
Right.
But in the end of the day, all of those voices don't mean anything compared to your family and the medical professionals that are taking care of you.
Absolutely. All right, Kenny.
All right, let's go to topic number 2, college football week 3 recap, man. I'm having so much fun with college football this year. What are some games that can I just tell you this? I like Colorado, but is it not crazy that they get their ass beat for 2 straight weeks? They win a game against Colorado State, and it becomes just this drama-filled. It drives me crazy. I just wanted to throw that out there too.
Y'all know
I can't stand it. You won a game against Colorado State. Now you're turning it into an indictment on.
The hype is fake. The hype is so overblown. I get it.
So wild.
But they do have 2 guys on that damn team that are just so freaking great.
Yeah,
Shador's awesome.
Travis
Hunter. Yeah, I said that I thought he'd be he's a late first round DB and a top 10 wide receiver. He's top 10 at both. I don't give a damn.
Yeah.
Did you see his stat line, guys?
Yes.
Give me a break. 100 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns, a PBU, and a pick.
Yeah.
This guy, I know we're going to give the Heisman to the best quarterback on the best team. That's what's going to happen. But if we're being real about that damn award, that's the guy we should be looking at. That's Shohei Ohtani shit, man.
Yeah.
And Shohei Ohtani, you can copy and paste and just give him the MVP when he's pitching.
Yeah, here's the thing. You had Charles Woodson, who won the Heisman back in '97, playing both sides of the ball. But he was a DB. Everybody knew Charles Woodson, DB, 100%, first-round pick. That's what he's doing. The thing about Travis Hunter is, and I think we've had this conversation, is there's a legitimate case to be made that he's the best wide receiver and the best defensive back in this class.
I almost think he's better at wide receiver than he is
I do too. I completely agree. I think he should play wide receiver at the next level.
Right.
I do. DB, I don't think he's the best in the class. I think Will Johnson is probably that guy. And Benjamin Morrison's
Will
up there as
Johnson's
well.
been Morrison or better.
Yeah, they're up there. But you could try to make an argument, and for you to be able to do that at receiver and corner for a player, the same player,
right,
is absurd.
Here's my big issue with him at DB. This is the thing about DB with him. I think he'd have to be a later pick because he's got all the measurables. He's 6'1", 180 pounds, fast as hell. Good ball skills, the whole thing. But he's not when you take a corner with the top 15 picks, you're looking for that guy that can stick and man on a 3rd down in the boundary.
Yes.
That's what you want. He's not that. I think he's a guy who could be a nice zone corner and use his instincts and watch the quarterback's eyes and go make big plays. That's what I do.
Trayvon Diggs. He's Trayvon Diggs.
Yeah, Diggs, yeah. Obviously the peak of that type of corner is Richard Sherman.
Yeah,
that's sort of the peak of what that corner looks like. But he was a 5th round pick, for God's sake.
Right.
So, that's what he is to me. And usually, when you see those top 10, top 15 corners, it's these guys can stick and man. They're draped all over you.
Right. And the thing is, at receiver, I think he could be elite in the NFL from day one. The way that we see rookie receivers transition now, he could be one of those guys from day one. Because he just instinctually is so good. He's long, he's fast, he's a good route runner. And he's putting up the stats that he puts up with 12, 13 catches a game. He's not getting many downfield targets, and that will more than likely not be the case in the NFL. So,
and I'm kind of coming around to potentially playing both ways. I'm kind of coming around. Not every snap on both sides of the ball.
In the NFL,
situationally, I think that you could.
I don't think you can. I think if you're gonna do that, you have to be a DB first and then play subsidiarily as a receiver.
Wide receiver.
But you just can't.
Why can't you do that the other way, where you're consistently playing wide receiver, but then we want our dime personnel in right now? Come on.
Okay, I guess you could in a package.
You know what I mean?
It's just different. It's just
we've
different.
never seen that. I can give you that. We have never seen that. But I think that I think you could be, if you're an NFL head coach, you get paid to make these decisions. I think you could find a way to get him involved on the defensive side of the ball and play him for every snap at wide receiver.
Yeah.
Even though you see it usually the other way around. Now, elsewhere in college football, Alabama impressed the hell out of me. Got to give them that. And I knew they would. Elsewhere we had the South Carolina LSU game. What'd you think of that one?
Hell of a game, man.
It was surprising, to say the least. The thing is, Brian Kelly's not going to make it very long at LSU if he cannot get this defense turned around, and it's been terrible since he got there. So
it's taken 2 years for them to lose all their edge on defense.
Yeah,
they barely run the ball either. They finally found something this week, but not much.
Yeah, if you're going to be the head coach at LSU, you got to play defense. What they're known for historically, they're churning out incredible defensive players, and they have a top defense every year. Brian Kelly's not going to last long if he doesn't get that ship righted.
So I kind of, at the end of the game, I kind of wanted Shane Beamer to lose. I got to be honest with you. Running the ball with Rocket Sanders on 1st and 10.
Yeah.
When you have 18 seconds left, and then you're just running it down to 5. You have a couple of plays you could run to get closer.
Something.
You're playing for the 45-yard field goal that you ultimately missed. That you deserve to lose. Like that is what his dad used to do. Don't be your dad. Be yourself. Yep. You know what I mean? Don't do the Beamer ball all the damn time. Play the game as it comes to you. He did not do that there. Now, I think overarchingly, week 3 is going to be defined by officiating and lack thereof being good officials. Like it was that pick 6 that was nullified for hitting Garrett Nussmeier by South Carolina was bullshit. I'm sorry. I don't care if you're an LSU fan and you're like, it's the letter of the law. It's like, no, he threw a pick. He was going to go try to chase him down. He can get blocked too. Yep. You know what I mean? Like that's stupid to me.
What about the targeting call in the Florida-Texas A&M game? That might be the craziest thing I've ever seen.
I can't do it anymore. I just can't do it with targeting. It's so in the eye of the beholder, and they're like, well, he launched and his head was down. News flash, okay?
That's how you tackle.
Sometimes you duck your head. It's just you have a helmet on your head.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do that, and it's incidental. It's not the end of the world.
And once again, if that's to the head, okay.
Sure, exactly.
He hit him in the hip. It's football. Let him play.
Like if the point of emphasis is lowering your head, call it on every play then.
Right. You have to.
When the center hits the defensive tackle, call it. Throw the flag.
Wait, I thought that was I thought the contact had to be to the helmet for it to be targeting.
No, launching, forcible contact, using the head, lowering the head, all that.
It's in other words, it's bullshit, Kenny. It's
wow, dude. That you could.
And then the how about the damn roughing the passer? They had one in the Kentucky game by a Georgia defender where you're like, what? And then there was the most inexplicable one. Indiana beat the hell out of UCLA, but Indiana guy comes off the edge, perfect sack, hits him right under his chin, head up. Doesn't even land on the guy. Throw a flag. Yeah. It's like all of this, and I'm not even so mad at the officials. I'm mad at the powers that be that create these
defining these
objective calls
that
the officials have to make.
Yeah.
Like it could be different depending on every different officiating crew you have.
100%.
That's so dumb to me. There's just so many judgment calls. That's the problem.
Yep.
All right, Kenny, next topic. Let's
go to the last topic, man. This has been a topic that has kind of, in the last 3 days, has just exploded in Memphis, and that's more conference realignment news. The Pac-12, well, not the Pac-12, the Pac-4. You guys are going to have to help me understand.
Pac-6 right now.
Pac-6, not right now. They are targeting certain schools from the AAC to.
I love it.
Right. They forcibly put their head down and they're hitting hips right now. But they are targeting teams to come in and basically fill out their to maintain their status.
They have to get to 8 by 2026, July 2026.
Right. And Memphis is one of those schools that they're looking at, is what everybody's talking about. So what are you guys' thoughts, man? Like, is this a real thing? Like, would Memphis accept this bid? What are y'all's thoughts? This has been a topic of conversation on the radio. It's gotten heated. A lot of stuff going on. So what are y'all's thoughts on this?
It's real.
Yeah.
I don't know how this actually works out for Memphis. Like in the end, I've said it. I just think you need to ask more questions before jumping in there. Who's coming with me? What's my TV money payout? Am I, is it going to offset my travel costs?
Yep.
But I think the biggest issue you have, right? And I think all of us will agree on this. If you can get out of the AAC, you do it by any means necessary. You just do it. It's a dying conference. Their answer to all this movement of Memphis and Tulane potentially being added, see what they said today? Air Force has emerged as a target for the American Athletic Conference.
Yeah.
Just add all the damn military academies. I'm not disparaging the military academies, but I know that the future for them in the money sports is not bright. Yeah. They have no NIL and they can't use the transfer portal.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, you're 100% right. Get out. And have you seen like these lame duck responses or people are like, if Memphis sells out and goes into the Pac-12, then I'm done. And it's like, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
What the hell are you talking about?
I've seen
do you want the athletic department to just keep operating at a deficit in this shitty ass conference?
Right. And the reasons that I keep saying is, well, it's all these these West Coast teams. Are we really going to go to the West Coast every week? And it's like, if that's what they have to do, 100%. Like you said, Gabe, and you're exactly right. If you can get out of the AAC by any means necessary, whatever you got to do. If you got to go fly to the West Coast 6-7 times a year and play away games at 9:30, do it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not a conversation. If you get that invite, you go.
Well, here's the only thing though. So like if you stay, right, you're just maybe dying a slow death, but also you could still hold out and see what happens with the ACC. I heard Bruce Feldman on Big Noon Kickoff say if the ACC completely, is left high and dry by Florida State and Clemson, they're going to backfill, and Memphis would probably be at the top of that list. Right. So that could be all bets are off for the Pac-12 and their new configuration of it.
Yes.
But if you don't think that that's a reality in the next 5-6 years, I say you hop in. But the problem is if you hop in and then you get there and you have success and then here's the ACC and Florida State goes to, I don't know, the Big 12 and so does Clemson or whatever. And then they say, come on down. Now you're locked in this grant of rights and it's harder to leave. Yeah. And they can make it very uncomfortable on you saying, well, you just got here. So why are you already jumping ship? I mean, this move is, and I thought Jeff Calkins on my show put it perfectly. He said, you're on a life raft right now that has sprung a leak and no one's doing anything about it.
Yeah.
No one has the means to do anything about it.
It's great.
Now, if you jump to the Pac-12, they have a life raft. It's probably about the same size, but at least they've taken some tape and covered the leak that they had.
Exactly.
And then I think David Cobb had another example. He said you're upgrading from an 03 Camry to a 07 Accord. You know what I mean? Like that. Like that's what it is. But what the bottom line of what they have said to me though, and the thing that I surmise from it, you're telling me it's better.
It's better.
So if it's better, you do it.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. But we'll see how it all plays out because this is going to be. The Pac-12 has to do this fast.
Yes.
Like an invite has to be extended quickly.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. All right. We appreciate you guys for joining us this week. If you're watching on YouTube, you can like, subscribe, and comment there. If you're listening, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, you can do the same there. You can also, Kenny's got a plug. What you got, Kenny?
Let me add to this. If you are an audio podcast listener, and you have noticed that your On the Bluff feed has not been updating. This is on me. I should have put this out there earlier, and I apologize. All of our Bluff City Media audio podcasts have been switched over to one feed. So if you sign up for the Bluff City Media Podcast Network, type that in anywhere you get your audio podcasts. All of our shows are on there. On the Bluff, Tigers Untapped, Night Court, Anthony Sainz Show, No Bluffin', everything is on there. Go check it out. We're a part
G5
of
Classified.
G5 Classified's on there. The best show, the best G5 show out there, man. The only one. Hey, but for real though, who are the two guests you've had on in the last 2 weeks? Right?
We had Barry Odom And then he ended up going and beating Kansas on
And
Friday.
they're
3-0 for the first time in school history since they've been in the FBS. Then we had Elijah Herring from the Tigers. They go to beat Florida State. I've been trying. I mean, Kyron's been telling people on socials, he's like, you want to win?
Come get that G5 bump, baby.
Come on down to G5 Classified. Have a conversation with the boys.
They
Come
work.
get that classified bump, baby.
Yeah, bro.
But
All
check
right.
it all out. It's all on there. We are a part of the Believe Network now, our audio podcast. So everything is on one feed. So come check it out. Bluff City Media Podcast Network.
Can also go to bluffcitymedia.co and check out all the podcast articles and videos there. Once again, we appreciate you guys for joining us, and we will see you back here next week.
Thank you for listening to On the Bluff. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a rating and a review wherever you download your podcasts. Also, like and subscribe to Bluff City Media's YouTube page. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co for comprehensive coverage of Memphis sports and how you can become an insider.